So we saw the reproducer being rebuilt. The next step is installing this spring. I had cleaned the motor. See how nice that looks? It's kind of an odd process I use when I clean the motor itself. Now, I can't do this with the springs because it's different cleaning the springs because you don't want any water in the springs. But I do a weird bath. It's Dawn and very hot water, and then a little bit of lacquer thinner, a little camp fuel, and acetone all mixed together. And you use heavy steel wool and scrub everything up. You notice how nice and it's clean the gears are. This is a pretty clean motor. To give you an idea, this is what this looked like before I had done anything to it. See how dirty the spring barrel is? This is different. You can't. This is just camp fuel, acetone, and lacquer thinner in there. And if you don't even notice that, you can see some of the old grease already coming off some of the parts, even though I haven't scrubbed them yet. So the first thing with the spring repair is to get the spring, all the old grease out of the spring using this mixture. You can't do the Dawn and water with the spring barrel like you do the motor itself. So we've just wanted to get some of the surface dirt off, and as you notice, it did a pretty good job compared to what it looked like before. It was all yellow. So this is just a beginning so we can disassemble it. So we'll be taking out some screws to get to the springs. This screw we'll be taking out, and then we have to take out all of these screws around the periphery of the spring barrel. So you can see how clean it was from the other. Here's some parts that I just cleaned in the solution. Look at there. This is oil. This is an oil retaining seal. It's got a felt in there. I cleaned the felt, took it out and put it back in, so it'll take grease again. And see how clean this little bushing is here. You see I took all the retaining screws out, and they're retaining screws out of here. And then we'll take this little screw out all the way. See, that's the spring screw there. We're holding this gear in. Watch. This shaft will come right out then, and the spring barrels come apart. And before we even get into the spring barrels, we'll clean these gears up. So, well, found something interesting out. The spring is not broken. It is just not hooked up. So we kind of got lucky with this one. We got a brand new spring. We'll just save it for another day, I guess. So there was a $25 that was kind of down the drain. There's nothing wrong with these springs. They just need to be cleaned. So we will clean and re-grease them. So this is a mainspring, and this is interesting on a Brunswick. See, it goes around. It has a wide hole on the end. See, wide hole on the end, and so we're gonna put it back in there. It was in wrong. It's supposed to go in like this. So that this, see how you can already tell how that it goes in, because there is the hook right there, so it hooks nicely. And naturally, it wasn't going to hook when it was in the wrong. It's kind of a safety feature, I guess, in these springs. But this is a Phonograph mainspring. I can't really show you how to put it in because it's dangerous to put it in with holding one hand on the camera. It's just something you can't do. But I cleaned the spring up. It's all shiny and clean, and got the old lubricant out. And I'll show you how I lubricate them. So I could show a little of me winding the spring in. So this is how it goes in. I put the little pin in there, and I'm winding it in. Brunswick springs, fortunately, are not the strongest springs of the world, so I can kind of show you how I put it in there hand to hand. Facing away from you, put the spring in the barrel. You see it's all nice and clean compared to what you saw earlier. So you can see we actually got the spring in properly. Remember before it was kind of repelling the inside of the spring. Let's see if I can show you this. Here. You see how that actually, instead of repelling it, it actually grabs it so they can wind it. See? It even jumped out and it actually got back in it. So somebody had been messing around with this and didn't know what they were doing, obviously. So we got the spring in there properly. Now I'm going to check the other spring, make sure it is in right. So this spring is wound counterclockwise. So we got both springs put back in the barrels and they're cleaned. So the next step is to grease them. Always been a fan of Mobil 1 synthetic grease in the springs. So that's what I use, Mobil 1 synthetic grease to grease my springs. But it by itself is a little too sticky. So I actually added some graphite to the grease. And this is actually powdered graphite packed for lubricating, marketed, designed for use in planters. I found this is good for everything. It's very, very purified graphite. I've used it for mold releases and everything else, and it just works really good. You can get it at like a John Deere dealership. And I've never had a trouble with it in spring barrels. It seems to work really good with synthetic grease. So we're going to put this screw in, if I can get it in focus here. This screw will go in. We got all of the peripheral screws in the barrel. And there's the peripheral springs. See, that's how it goes in. The gear goes in through both spring barrels, and then it gets put together with the screw here. So now the spring barrel's put together, and it seems like it's going to work. We'll see when we actually put it together. But there is the spring barrel put together. There's the screw in the shaft putting it all together. So I'll show you this. There is a spacer here, a little washer here. See the washers on there? And then this goes and meshes with that gear. So that's in there. This is keeps oil in it to keep it lubricated so it spins. So that goes on that end. And then this goes like that. So that washer goes there. I want to mention that sometimes people work on these that should not work at all. See how that is up like that? That is not correct. This is the way I found it, but we'll fix it. It will not wind this way. So yeah, whoever worked on this before had no concept of how it worked. So we took this screw out here. Oh, can't really see it very well, but So nobody had a concept of how this works. See the screw? I took the screw out and I flipped this pawl over this way. The reason is it has to fit in these tines. So they had it backwards. Whoever worked on it, one had spring backwards and then they had this backwards. No wonder why it never worked. So let's take a look at this motor. So this is the screw goes in there like that. We have a spacer. It goes spacer, gear, which the gear is permanently in the barrel. It's sealed in there. And then this side, there's a shaft that goes from all the way through here. And then there's a screw, right? You turn this. In fact, I can already tell it's working, because it's got power already, so we must have did this right, so that's good. But this is a Brunswick motor. all finished now, except for oiling and greasing. So, did our repair work? Well, let's see. It is actually running, and quite quietly at that. So we found out spring was not broken, that the winding pawl was in backwards, and the spring was in backwards. We reversed the spring so that the arbor would catch the spring, because it's only open on one side, the other side's closed, and it works. This is a number 2 Brunswick motor. So this is the Brunswick machine that we just worked on the motor, and this is it. Let's take a look at it from this far away. It's kind of an older model. It has a metal diaphragm. So let's turn it on and listen to it. We're listening to a Brunswick record of Ernest Hare. That's the tone control closed. Tone control all the way open. Saxophone solo by Rudy Wynoff.